Here is a little critical, very important thinking, but little complicated, means it's very, very, very full of logic. What they call intellectual quibbling. But it is not just intellectual quibbling, it's very important. It can give an insight into. You can tide over a very big crisis in thinking. You follow it. The Purvapakshi says, sir, if the pot is there, even before it was made, if it is there, then why is it that it is not seen? Then the Siddhanti says it is not seen because it is veiled by another creation called Mritpinda or Kapala. One creation can be veiled by another creation. That's the whole essence of it. It is there but veiled. Why can't we say it is not there? No, we can't take that stand, it is not there, because if it is totally not there, then it should not be available for creation. What is available for creation alone can be created. So either it is manifestly present or it is unmanifestly present is a huge sanity. This is the only thing that can counter the universal sense that before the creation, what is created was non-existent before creation. This is the universal sense. In fact, what comes in the way of continuity, what comes in the way of understanding the continuity of existence, what comes in the way of understanding the continuity of existence, continuity of one's own existence, which is indeed the totality of existence, what comes in the way of understanding that continuity is this universal thinking that, well, a thing that is born, before its birth, it was totally non-existent. If everything that is created was manifestly now, unmanifestly now, manifestly now, unmanifestly now, then how do you reach non-existence? How do you arrive at non-existence? The possibility, the very straying into the realm of it, the very scope to make a mistake of there being any non-existence. Concluding non-existence is not possible. The world is now present manifest. Now it is manifestly present. Now it is unmanifestly present. Now it is manifestly present. Now it is unmanifestly present. Now where is the scope for concluding non-existence? Present, 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 present. If presence doesn't alternate with absence, then how do you conclude absence? The only way by which man can arrive at absence is the presence alternates with absence. How else does he think about absence? How else does one think of one's own absence? How else does one think of the absence of the universe? I say now it is present, before it was absent. Now it is present, later on it will be absent. Now I am present, before absent. Now I am present, later on I will be absent. Now you remove this alternation G. Now I am manifestly present, now I am unmanifestly present. If you appreciate it even vaguely, you appreciate eternity vaguely. You appreciate eternity. That means what? You give yourself no scope. You give yourself no scope. To conclude, Non-existence, shunyam. How else do you avoid non-existence? How else does one avoid the fear of death? Without avoiding the conclusion of non-existence, you can't avoid fear of death. इतना आसान है. Just by taking a compose, the fear also becomes unmanifest. See, it doesn't become non-existent. Therefore, the only way, this particular thing, this is a very big crisis. How do you avoid the conclusion of non-existence? In order to avoid the conclusion of non-existence, I have to think that everything that is was there too in the unmanifest, will be there in the unmanifest, to become manifest. Continuity. What about the truth? I say whatever is manifest, manifests in the truth. Whatever becomes unmanifest, unmanifests also in the truth. And the truth doesn't alternate with its absence. बहुत बड़ी बात है जी. The source and the creation don't alternate each other. You must first understand the meaning of the word alternate. Yes. Now the source is there, now the source is gone, now the creation alone is there, now the creation is gone, source alone is there. अभी source है, अभी creation है, अभी source है, अभी creation है, जैसे अभी सुख है, अभी दुख है. This is called alternation. Alternation. Now truth can't alternate with the creation. The truth can't alternate with creation. Nor can truth alternate with its own absence. Alternation is only the broad picture of alternation is only Vyakritam and Avyakritam. And within that alternation of manifestation and non-manifestation, the other cycles are there. Pleasure, pain, pleasure, pain. Pleasure alternates with pain. In fact, I would like to interpret it little differently. Instead of saying pleasure and pain alternate each other, I would like to say the pleasure, the manifestation of the pleasure alternates with the unmanifest state of the pleasure. The manifest state of the pain, now the pain is manifest, now the pain is unmanifest. Now the pain is manifest, now the pain is unmanifest. Now the pleasure is manifest, now the pleasure is unmanifest. Therefore, alternation is only between Vyakriti and Avyakriti, not even between Sukha and Dukkha, even though it looks like. From a layman's point of view, Sukha Dukkha alternate. But from Shastra point of view, Sukha alternates with its own unmanifest state. Dukkha alternates with its own unmanifest state. The alternation is only between manifest state of the universe and the unmanifest. When you think of everything in terms of Vyakriti and Avyakriti, you have no scope to arrive at, you have no scope to conclude non-existence, shunyam. You have no scope. That's why Bhagavan Krishna says in the second chapter, Avyaktadini bhutani vyakta madhyani bharata avyakta nidhananyeva tatraka paridevana. A very big, beautiful statement. Everything, avyakta adini bhutani, all individuals emerge from the unmanifest. Vyakta madhyani, remain manifest for a few days. Avyakta nidhananyeva, and they go back into the unmanifest state. Tatra ka paridevana. Why should there be any worry there? Why should there be worry? Because before you were born you were unmanifest, now you are manifest. You are going to become again unmanifest as a jiva. He tried to explain to Arjuna, this is very interesting. He says, sir, you appear in the truth and play about in the truth and again resolve unto the truth. You are by nature the truth. It went above Arjuna's head. He tried to trace Jiva to the truth. Krishna tried to explain to Arjuna that this individual is none other than the truth. So when you are the truth, where is the paridevana, where is the worry? Then Krishna says, alright, if you can't understand it, I am telling you something else, where you cannot conclude any non-existence. You emerge from your own unmanifest state and play about as manifest and again become unmanifest. You continue as an individual, alright. There is no reference to the source. You have continuity either as manifest or unmanifest, so there is no scope to conclude any death, non-existence. So where is the paridevana? Thus this entire thinking, this entire reasoning can help a person to tide over this great crisis in life of concluding non-existence. This is what we are doing, Ji. Now the Purvapakshi says, sir, even before the pot is created, if you say there is pot, then why is it not seen? Siddhanta says it is enveloped, it is veiled by another creation. If it is veiled by another creation, then the Purvapakshi said, that is where we stopped yesterday, then you should only try to remove the avaranam rather than create a pot. If there is a pot and if there is a veil, remove the veil, then the pot should be seen. Avarana abhave eva yatna kartavyaha iti chet. Now he elaborates, Purvapakshi. Pinda kapala avasthayoho. The form of mrit pinda, the clay ball. When the clay is in the form of a ball, you don't see a pot. When you break the pot into pieces of pot, then you don't see pot. But Siddhanta says there is still pot. Pot to hai wahan par. So here Purvapakshi says, if there is already pot and if it is veiled by pinda, then only remove the pinda. Dismantle the pinda, you should see pot. Dismantle the kapala, you should see the pot. Pinda kapala avasthayoho vidyamanameva ghatadi karyam avritatvat na upalabhyate iti chet. If we were to say, Pinda kapala avasthayoho vidyamanameva, the pot that is very much there concealed by mrit pinda, the pot that is very much there concealed by the kapala. Kapala avasthayoho vidyamanameva ghatadi karyam avritatvat, because it is concealed by mrit pinda and kapala. Now upalabhyate ityadi Siddhanti, if you were to assert that the pot is not seen because it is concealed by mrit pinda or kapala, then chet, Purvapakshi says, in that case, if you think the pot is concealed by mrit pinda, then your effort should be to remove mrit pinda, dismantle it. You don't have to make a pot. Remove the veil. Ghatadi karyarthina, the one who wants a pot, what should he do? Tadavarana vinasheyeva yatna kartavyaha. He should make effort only in destroying that veil. Na ghatadi utpattav, he need not make any effort to make a pot. If pot is already there, concealed by mrit pinda, then dismantle mrit pinda If you think the pot is already there, concealed by the kapala, then dismantle the kapala. You don't have to make an extra effort to make a pot. Ghatadi utpattau nachayetadasti. But then you don't do that. You don't merely dismantle the pinda. You don't merely dismantle the kapala. You also do something else to create a pot. If you are making an effort to create a pot, to shape a pot, which means before you shaped the pot was not there. Tasmad ayuktam, Purvapakshi concludes. Therefore, sir, it is illogical. It is untenable. It is unfair on your part to say that Vidyamanasya eva avritatvat anupalabdhiriti chet. For you to assert that the pot is there, but yet it is not seen. It is not seen, but it is there. It is not seen, but it is there. How is it there? Concealed by this and that. To assert like this is not fair. Because if it is really there, but concealed by something, you should only remove that concealment. You don't have to make a pot. This is Purvapaksha. You have been able to follow? Yes, try to follow. Which means there is nothing gained. जब हम लोग बच्चे लोग जैसे when we started Vedanta, we just used to run like ये तो साधारण बात है. You know, we learned Buddhism and dismissed it also in one class. Yeah, ji. Yeah, it was winning. But Bhashyakara being so kind to us, like a mother, he goes on explaining. But sometimes he does become like a mother-in-law. Sometimes he is a mother, sometimes he is like goes on and on and on. Like mother like mother-in-law. Now, it's very beautiful. Now Siddhartha begins the answer. Sir, in order to perceive the pot, I should not only remove the veil, but also make some effort. I have to make it. I have to give it shape. Na aniyamat. A lot of discussion is there. We will try our best to do justice to this. Because if we can clinch this thought very well, something can exist unperceived, and that is a matter of inference on the basis of later manifestation. Had I been non-existent in sleep, I would not have woken up. Now that I have woken up means I was definitely there as a manifest. Is a more correct conclusion than the conclusion that because I did not see myself, I was not there. That's not right conclusion. Because the repercussion would be, if I was totally non-existent, how did I wake up? Number one, if my individuality was something that totally became non-existent, then there was scope for some other individuality to wake up. Yes. When a musician goes to sleep, only musician wakes up. If the musician came to an end, a scientist can also wake up. But one doesn't wake up as a scientist. If he went to sleep as a musician, he wakes up also as a musician because his musician identity, that particular individuality, was there as unmanifest. And once we appreciate this, you can never arrive at the suspension of existence. You cannot arrive at, you can't conclude suspension of existence. the very insight about life is changed. It's gone. Man plays around in this creation based on that particular conclusion. Existence will be followed by non-existence. Yes. Therefore, I take life lightly. I take everything lightly. I become even callous. एक दिन तो मर जाना है, क्या है, छोड़ो, खाओ, पियो, like this. Human beings can become careless. Carelessness is born of a wrong conclusion about the truth. And the wrong conclusion is that existence is followed by non-existence. But this particular reasoning tells us there is never a moment of non-existence. Because there is only manifest and unmanifest state. Manifestly present and manifestly present. Because the one big problem is to testify to non-existence, we require the existence of the observer. It's a very, very critical thing. It creates a problem. Without really the observer, you can't talk anything. The existence, the manifest state is also relative to, it is related to the observer. Even the unmanifest state, the inferred unmanifest state also is related to the observer. And if there is something called non-existence, that non-existence also has to be testified by the observer. And observer is a matter of experience, it is not in the form of a thought. Observing is not a mental situation. Because the very absence of the mind is observed, is experienced. The absence of my own mind is testified by me. When I went to sleep, my mind was not there, is testified by me. The resolution of my mind or the unmanifest state of my mind or whatever it is, the absence of my mind is testified by me. And because it re-manifests, I can say it was unmanifest. Therefore, the unmanifest situation of the mind is testified by me. And without there being this me called the observer, how do you conclude absence of everything? And therefore, it is not difficult for Vedanta to dismiss everything in God's creation, every school of thought. Why? Because the timeless observer is not the topic of anybody. The timeless observer is the topic of solely Vedanta. And without that Sakshi, without that observer, you can't prove anything, you can't prove anything. Therefore, that observer that is the truth. Now I am going to say something. That means it is the truth that testifies to the manifest state of the universe and the unmanifest state of the universe. There is no pramanam that can testify to the presence of the truth. Truth doesn't need to be testified. It is the truth that testifies. Do you see the depth of it? Truth doesn't need to be testified because it is the truth that testifies to the presence of the name and form and also the absence of the name and form or the manifest state of the name and form or the unmanifest state of the name. Therefore, is it difficult for Vedanta to dismiss all? Therefore, please, now here is something very important. Therefore, it is not the scholarship of the Vedantis that helps them to dismiss, refute all schools. It is the correctness of their Siddhanta. It is not that erudition. Erudition is nothing. Erudition minus the acceptance of the observer. What do you do, Ji? A theological erudition. What do you do? A theological erudition. What do you do? Erudite scholar. Okay. What do you do with that? Scholarship cannot testify to anything, because scholarship also becomes manifest and unmanifest. What becomes unmanifest cannot testify to its own unmanifest state. A scholar स्वयं ही खत्म हो जाता है, स्वयं ही खत्म हो जाए scholar. When we understand this, in fact, you transcend the university. Yes. The testifier is you. Who testifies to the beginning of the mind is the truth. Who testifies to the end of the truth? The truth. Who testifies to the beginning of the dream? The truth. Who testifies to the end? The truth. Who testifies to the beginning of life? The truth. Who testifies to the end of life? The truth. That testifier of everything doesn't require to be testified. Therefore, what is the final pramana? Satyam is the pramana. For Satyam, the pramana means Satyam. Vedanta refers to Satyam. Therefore, Satyam is understood in its own light. Truth is understood in its own light. Yes. Okay जी. हमको ऐसा बात करने में आनंद आता है जी. हमको और कोई प्रवचन हमको इतना अच्छा नहीं लगता. Go on referring to the truth. That is my anand. If I were to tell it here, can you repeat it for 30 years? You can repeat the teaching about the truth not only 30 years, 30,000 years. It will look very, very interesting. Like even after searching for happiness at 30,000 years, the search will still be it will be fresh. If I had to tell Ramayana every day, I would have lost all the students. Naiji, this is what man. The only thing that can make man look at the truth is drawing his attention again and again to it in the right manner. Give him no scope for distraction. Let him discover that there is no scope for distraction. Wave cannot be a distraction from water. Therefore here the Purvapakshi said, sir, if pot is there, even when it is not seen, if it is still there, why is it not seen? Because it is concealed by the pinda and the kapala. In that case you should remove, dismantle them, why create them? In answer to this, Siddhanta says, na aniyamat, there is no hard and fast rule. That only you have to remove, not create. Sometimes we have to remove and also create. That aniyamat is going to be unfolded. There is no hard and fast rule that by just really removing by dismantling the veil, the pot will be seen. Because it is there in a different way. It is there in the potential form. I am only talking about its existence. I am not asserting that the pot is manifest there, but only I am saying pot is there. Its manifest presence is it's a presence. Its unmanifest presence also is presence. I am only saying even when the pot is not seen, it is there. I am not saying it is manifestly there. I am only saying it is there. It is there. It is there. In an unqualified manner it is there. Or you can say it unmanifestly it is there. And therefore, it is necessary not only to dismantle the Brith, Pinda and Kapala, it is also necessary to shape it, to give it an opportunity to express itself. You only give it a conducive atmosphere to express it. All this language is required to dismiss the Purvapaksha. Na aniyamat. Nahi vinasha matra prayatnadeva ghatadi abhivyaktir niyata. Nahi not vinasha matra prayatnadeva, by mere effort of dismantling the Pinda and Kapala, ghatadi abhivyaktihi, that the ghata will become manifest. Niyata is not a rule. It is not a rule that the pot becomes manifest by removing the Pinda and Kapala. To make it manifest, not only I have to do two jobs, not only to dismantle the veil, but also and do some extra work to create it. But if you have to create, then it is not there. No, I can only create what is there. Siddhanti is talking about the presence. Purvapakshi is talking about the perceptibility. You understand, slowly, you discover where lies the communication gap. You see, you have to discover the communication gap. It may be a it's not an unwitting communication gap. It is a very deliberate communication gap. You know, the presence of pot, the Buddhist interprets a pot as the form of the pot. Siddhanti interprets the word pot as the presence. Why? Because a Buddhist is more, his whole his theory is geared to negating presence. And what the Siddhanti would like to convey to the Buddhist is, even when it is not manifest, it is present. There is no negation of its presence. What is present? It is there. Even the potentiality of it is the presence. The very presence of the clay with the potential to look upon is the presence of the pot. Because absence is too technical a term. If it is absent, it should not be available for manifestation. You see, that is the definition of absence. It is not temporary absence or anything. There is no such a thing called temporary absence, nor there is a permanent absence. बहुत बड़ी बात है, इसको unfold करने में time लगता है. If there were a temporary absence, then there should also be permanent absence. But there is no such a thing called temporary absence. There can be a temporary unmanifest situation. The pot is temporarily unmanifest and temporarily manifest, but not temporarily present and temporarily absent. Therefore, absence cannot be concluded as to be there. We can never conclude that there can be something called absence temporarily or permanently. There is neither temporary presence Neither there is temporary absence nor permanent absence. Why? Because we can't conclude absence. Whereas the entire Buddhism is geared to conclude the permanent absence. Whereas the Siddhanti is saying here, there is no scope for that. Why? Because even when you don't see the pot is there. Even when you don't see the universe is there. Thus, manifest presence, unmanifest presence of the universe, eternal presence of the content of both. There is presence to presence. There is manifest presence, unmanifest presence, eternal presence. Are you able to follow? The wave has manifest presence. The wave has unmanifest presence. And its truth, the water, has eternal presence. In that manner. This is exactly what Brihadaranyaka Shruti in the 4th Adhyaya says, Satyasya Satyam. It defines Brahman as Satyasya Satyam, the truth of the truth. The truth of the truth. The truth of the truth means the source of the is. It is the ever-present is the truth of manifestly present. The ever-present is the truth of the unmanifestly present. The manifestly present, the unmanifestly present is the first Satyam, whereas the truth of both is the Satyasya Satyam. Do not things fall in their places? The entire Shastram falls in its place. Every word falls in its place. If you think correctly. Therefore here Bhashyakara is saying, sir, nahi vinashamatra prayatnadeva ghatadi abhivektirniyata. For example, he says, tama adi avrite ghatadau. When there is a pot concealed in darkness, tama adi avrite ghatadau, pradipadi utpattau prayatna darshanat. I make an effort not only to remove darkness, but also I make an extra effort to create light. Creating light is a positive effort. I am creating light. And in order to remove the darkness, I have to create light. I am doing an extra effort. So in order to remove darkness, I have to create light. Similarly, in order to remove the pinda, supposing when I dismantle pinda, it becomes again a pile of clay, which is another srishti. Kapala is another srishti, and one srishti conceals another srishti. You have to follow quickly. Kapala is a srishti place. Pinda is a srishti. Supposing you do the churna, means you powder it, even that as powder, a pile of powder, it becomes another srishti. And one srishti conceals another srishti. That is the logic. Even scholars don't show interest in this thing, but I am able to make you listen. कुछ तो स्तुति कीजिए, ज़्यादा नहीं तो कोई बात नहीं. Otherwise, you see, even scholar says, leave it. I tell you, if you leave this to that extent, you will have a problem in life. Because the growth that you make in analyzing the truth, it is that growth that gives you the dividends in the course of your life. The results of growth in understanding Vedanta are felt in day-to-day life. Understand? The results of values may be felt in a very simple way, but the results of your growth in Vedanta are felt in a very profound manner in life. The very deep crises are tided over through the growth in Vedanta. Sometimes even the values become very incapable of solving certain crises. Dharma also sometimes fails to help you. Dharma fails to help you. There it is this crisis. It is this growth in understanding Vedanta. And therefore when scholars really shy away from this thinking, but whenever you shy away from a deep analysis, to that extent you will suffer in life. Why? Because you have to clinch this thought that it is not possible to conclude non-existence. You can't just really conclude sleep as non-existence, prior to life as non-existence, or after leaving the body as non-existence. A mere blackout is not non-existence, because even the blackout is testified by the light. Even the darkness is testified by the light of awareness. Even in the waking state, when it is all dark, it is testified by awareness. Even physical light is testified by awareness. Physical darkness is testified by awareness. Whereas the presence of awareness is not testified by another awareness. And therefore, Bhagavan says, so we should not only, so when you see, when there is a kapala, it conceals the pot. When there is a pinda, it conceals the pot. If it is a pile of churnam, then also it conceals the pot. Therefore, in order to dismantle them, along with the dismantling them, I have to also, in fact, when I create a pot, all other creations get concealed. When I make a pot, the creation of pot conceals other creations. Thus, neither the source conceals, source doesn't conceal the creation. Creation doesn't conceal the source. But what conceals is one creation. What is concealed is another creation. Do you appreciate this or not? One thought conceals another thought. Thought is not concealed by the thinker. Nor the thought conceals the thinker. But one thought conceals another thought. Because when one thought arises, the other thought becomes unmanifest. The way of saying is, it is concealed. It is there, but concealed. Bas. It is there. Supposing the Siddhanti says, sir, even when the thought is not felt, it is there, because you can always pull it up. Then the Purvapakshi will ask a question, if it is there, I should see it. In answer to that, he says, it is concealed. Bas itna hi hai. Therefore, one creation is concealed by another creation, and therefore, if I have to, when I dismantle the Mritpinda, when I dismantle the Kapala, it becomes Churnam. Means what? When I powder it, it becomes a pile of Churnam. It becomes another creation. That means the clay always looks in one form or the other. There is always some creation in it. As a pile, I call it a creation. Kapala is another creation. Mritpinda is another creation. Pot is also another creation. So when it is a pinda, I don't see pot. When it is a kapala, I don't see pot. When it is a pile of churnam, I don't see pot. And therefore, in order to see the pot, I should not only dismantle them, but in the process of dismantling them, I have to create. Just as in order to dismantle the darkness, I have to create the light. See the Siddhanta. Logic to logic. Anyway, they build their theory on logic, so we dismantle it also through logic. Aur kya? Has Bhagavan, has Bhashyakara quoted any Shastram here? No, he is only countering logic through logic. You can't say, hey Buddhists, you say it is Shunyam, but our Vedanta says it is Purnam. He says you keep your Vedanta to yourself. Because we follow only logic. Then you should not talk about Shastra and finish him through logic and ultimately, of course, with the strength of Shastra. Your logic stems from the vision of the Shastra. His logic stems from ignorance. Therefore, your logic that stems from your vision of the truth can demolish their logic. Yes. Shruti Sammata Yukti finishes off this Utarka. Okay. Now Purvapakshi comes again, says, up to this you are clear absolutely, the reasoning. Unless you are following and you can't enjoy, then it all becomes very, very dry. Then you will say, Swamiji, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is very dry, they will say. Then I have to say, no, it is not dry. It is very juicy. You have to make an effort. So unnecessary discussion will ensue. Therefore, try to follow. I can repeat it. Because repeating is not my problem. Repeating is, I never feel tired of repeating, because if there is one thing that is worth repeating, that is the truth. That is Vedanta. Everything else has punarukti dosha. Repetition is a flaw, unnecessary. Repetition is boring. But when it comes to the effort to understand the truth, repetition is not a problem. That is why one of the Shadlingas is Abhyasa. Saying it again and again and again and again. That is called Abhyas. Abhyas. Like Shvetaketu was told Tattvamasi 9 times. 9 times. He was given 9 examples. This is not Punarukti, it is Abhyas. Punarukti means I said table. Again I said table, that is Punarukti. Where an unwarranted repetition is an unwarranted, unwanted repetition. Fruitless repetition. Repetition doesn't add anything, then it is called fruitless. That is called Punarukti, which becomes a dosha. Like, supposing you say to somebody, so this is a table. What is it made of? By wood. You say once you say it is made of wood, and again you say it is made of wood. Then it becomes what? Punarukti is a dosha. But. If you try to explain the same thing again and again, it is not called Punarukti. Repeated explanation is called Abhyasa. There is a difference between Abhyasa and Punarukti, yes. Repeated explanation is different from an unwarranted repetition. Now, aap bataiye, what do I do in the class? Punarukti or Abhyasa? लाख शुक्र आई जी, नहीं तो आप लोग कह देते पुनरुक्ति, मैं कहा जाता फिर. It is not पुनरुक्ति, it is अभ्यास, repeated explanation जी. That's what we require. Anyway, now Purvapakshi again says, Sopi tamo nashaya eva iti chet. When the Siddhanti said one has to make an effort in the process of removing darkness, one has to make an extra effort of creating light. Now the Purvapakshi says, my dear sir, Even you are creating light only for the purpose of removing darkness, not for making the pot. You are creating light only to remove darkness, not for creating the pot. Sopi tamo nashaya eva iti chet. He elaborates. Deepadi utpattau api. Even when you create light, like a flame of lamp, yaha prayatnaha, whatever effort you make to create light, sopi, that effort also, tamas tiraskaranaya, it is only to remove darkness. Tasmin nashte, once the darkness is gone, Ghataha, the pot, swayameva upalabhyate. The pot is already there, pot is seen automatically. That means you don't have to make the pot comes to be seen the moment you create the light. In order to remove that darkness, you create the light. But you are not making the pot. Nahi ghate kinchit adhiyate iti chet, but you don't add anything to the pot. You don't make the pot, you don't add anything to the pot, you only remove darkness and the pot is seen. But here you want to make the pot. For this now comes the real answer. This is very, very, very deep. I hope you will be able to. Siddhanta says, my dear, no, you are wrong. Prakasha vataha ghatasya upalabhya manatvat is a very beautiful answer. He must have thought before he structured this sentence, he must have, few seconds he must have prepared himself. Pot is seen not in the absence of darkness. Pot is seen in the presence of light. The presence of light has its own identity. It can never be called absence of darkness. Darkness is absence of light, but presence of light is presence of light, not absence of darkness. Darkness is absence of light, whereas presence of light is present. It has its own identity. It has its own identity. Light has its own identity. Darkness has to be defined as absence of light. But presence of light, it has its own identity. It is one of the elements. Fifth element is not absence of sixth element. Fourth element is not absence of seventh element. Third element is not absence of eighth element. The presence of five elements is not in the form of the absence of the other five elements. Are you able to follow? Presence of element is presence of element. Very big thing. Therefore, a pot is always perceived not in the absence of darkness. A pot is perceived only in the presence of the light. Therefore, when I create light, it is not merely to remove darkness, but to create presence of light. The presence of light is what we require, not absence of darkness. Because you cannot think of absence, you cannot be mutual. Darkness is absence of light, but light is not absence of darkness. They are not mutual, they are not absence of each other. That you can never have such a situation. If darkness is absence of light, then light is its own presence. It has its own identity. It has its own identity. Either both have their own identity, like Sukham and Dukkham. Sukham has its own identity, pleasure. Dukkham also has its own identity, and both are opposed to each other. Love is an emotion, it has its own identity. I can't say love is absence of hate. No, it has its own identity. Hate also has its own identity. They both of them have their own identity but opposed to each other. That's a different thing. Mere absence of hate need not mean love. Mere absence of love need not mean hate. But here, in that manner, both have their own identity. But when it comes to the light and darkness, I want you to give your attention here. Darkness can never have its own identity. Do you know why? If darkness can have its own identity having opposition to the light, then darkness can come and negate light. Like love can negate hate. Hate can come and negate love. They can oppose each other. If love can come and negate the hate, hate also can come and negate the love. But in the case of the light and darkness, the darkness cannot be brought and negate the light. Darkness cannot come and work against light. Hate can work against love. Love can work against hate. They are called dvandvas. They can work against each other. But darkness cannot work against the light. Why? Because darkness doesn't have its own identity. Whether it has its own identity, Mula Vidyavadi says it has its own identity. Whereas Bhashyakara says it doesn't have its own identity. The Sampradayam says it doesn't have its own identity. And it is for every student of Vedanta to understand whether it has its own identity. And I have given you the logic. If it has its own identity, it should be able to come and work against light. Therefore, darkness can be defined as absence of light, but light cannot be defined as absence of darkness, because darkness itself is absence of light. Whereas light is presence of light. Light is presence of light. It has its own identity. Therefore, how is pot perceived? Pot is perceived endowed with presence of light, not endowed with absence of darkness. You are thinking in terms of removing darkness. I am thinking in terms of creating light. I say pot comes to be seen in the presence of light. Pot comes to be seen not in the mere absence, because there is no such a thing called absence of darkness. There can be presence of light. Are you able to follow? Just as light is perceived in the presence of the light, and to create that light I have to make an effort. In that manner, to be able to see pot, I have to make an extra effort. And that effort must be in addition to creating, doing some extra effort, or making the pot seen. Pot comes to be seen only when it is shaped. It is there, but it needs to be shaped. Yes. Buddhist का दिमाग खराब हो जाता है. When Siddhanti says it is there but it needs to be shaped, I say presence is different from manifestation. It can be unmanifestly present. Potential. Buddhist becomes really, क्या हो रहा है? He says, even though it is there, first he said, but I can't see. And then he says, now I should not only, and then this is a big thing. Darkness can't be removed, only light can be created. He is already getting into really, he is becoming nervous, he is getting confused. And now he says, even though there is a pot, in order to see it, you should not only dismantle the pinda and the kapala, you should give it a shape. Because without giving it a shape, you can't see it. For that I have to make the next diagram. All that he is going to say. But all that he is going to say is perfectly in conformity with the truth. It is not a hair-splitting argument. It is a subtle way of thinking. But the entire thinking conforms to the truth. Conforms to the truth. We continue it later. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Ji, Hari Om Ji, Namah Shivaya. Hari Om Ji, today is Dr. Ji's